So before I go into anything big, I want to say, hi, my name is Jolane, and I love ayahuasca. Hi, Jolane! Because a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is going to be about risks, and it's going to be about problems, and I just wanted to get it said at the beginning that I'm absolutely for ayahuasca in most, if not all cases. So try and keep that in mind, because the last thing I want to do is to put people off ayahuasca. Why do I love ayahuasca? I love ayahuasca because it basically saved my life. This is me in 2001. At this point, I weighed about 110 kilos, so that's like 18 stone. I had post-traumatic stress, I had an underactive thyroid, I had major depression, I fell prey to every cold and virus that you can possibly imagine all the time. I was miserable. I started going down to Peru, to Iquitos in 2005. I went to the very first ayahuasca conference in Iquitos, and I met a healer that I was going to be working with for the next 8 years. So in 2006, the picture all the way on the right, that was me. You could actually see me when I was in this state if you saw rapper Zam's film, Awakenings. I'm in the book too. That was after about 5 ceremonies, that picture. The middle picture is after about 20 ceremonies. The third picture is after about 80 ceremonies. So little by little, I got better and better, and I was so impressed with the healing that I got and the power of my teacher that I became his apprentice. And I've been going down to Iquitos every year since 2007 for at least 3 months. So far I've racked up 2 years, not all in one go, but in bits and pieces, and I've been drinking at home in between as well. So I've seen a lot of people come and go in Iquitos, and I've seen the scene change a lot just in the last 7 or 8 years. This is my teacher, Don Juan Paima. He is originally Colombian, but he's been living in Iquitos for a good 25 years. He's a Vietnam vet. He's traveled worldwide, has many years of experience, and he is running a school and healing center just outside Iquitos. Actually, it's not even outside Iquitos anymore, it's in Iquitos, because Iquitos has kind of spread out to meet him. Just for a refresher, where is Iquitos? Iquitos is at the confluence of the Nanay, Itaya, and Amazon rivers, 125 miles downstream of the Amazon headwaters. This is about 600 miles northeast of Lima, and it's a different world from Lima and the Andes and everything that people normally think about as Peru. Shamanic tourism has increased more than 500% since 2005. This is based on an estimate from Evgenia Fotiu's thesis in 2010, and also on figures I was able to squeeze out of the Iquitos Tourist Board with great difficulty, I might add. So don't go taking this as gospel, but it's a pretty good estimate. Just a quick review, ayahuasca is vine of the soul. It's a herbal brew made of at least 2 plants, chacruna leaf, Psychotria viridis, and ayahuasca vine, Banisteriopsis caapi. The most common admixtures are tobacco, and this is Nicotiana rustica, not the stuff that we get in commercial cigarettes. It's about 9 times more nicotine than commercial cigarettes, and toe, which is tree datura, and that's Bergmansia. In large doses, toe can cause brain damage. It's a deliriant. In good brews, you only use a very tiny bit. We're talking about maybe 3 leaves per kilo of ayahuasca vine. So here's a picture of the chacruna and a picture of the vine. And here we have the tobacco and the toe. So the argument that I'm going to present here is that ayahuasca has become big business in Iquitos. And because of that, it has led to widespread overharvesting, consequent price increases, and increasing adulteration of the brew with a lot of other plants. Moreover, the people who have come down to Iquitos to drink have been slowly changing how the ayahuasca is administered and the whole vibe of the area. Not necessarily through any intent of theirs, but just because of who they are and their cultural background and their expectations. So, big business. As I said, the tourism has increased a lot lately, and the number of centers, which when I went down in 2005 was maybe 5 or 6, is now up to at least 24. And they range everything from extremely basic, which is kind of where my teacher comes in. It's basically just him and his family living at the level that they do. When I first went there, they didn't have running water, all the way on up to places like the Blue Morpho, which is basically ayahuasca sanitized for your protection. There's also a worldwide market in ayahuasca vine and chacruna that's sold via internet, which is not directly relevant to the people who are coming down, but it is kind of an add-on, because what happens is the people encounter the ayahuasca in Iquitos, they go home, they want to experience it home, so they are ordering it online. I have to admit, I've done this too, because how else are we going to get it? This has caused widespread overharvesting. You used to be able to get decent ayahuasca vine within 5 miles of the center of Iquitos. The thing about ayahuasca is that it takes at least 5 years to get to a usable size. Well, it is usable when it is smaller, but for actual good therapeutic and visionary use, you want it to be at least 5 years old, and older is better. Unfortunately, now that people know that gringos will pay a lot of money for old vine, they're going into the jungle and they're hacking down the trunks of the vine rather than just the kind of ramifications. So what you'll get is some really incredible ayahuasca made from 20-year-old vine, and you're never going to have it again because it's been cut down and it's going to take years and years and years before it grows back. The same amount of money that bought maybe 10 kilos of vine in 2005 now buys 1, maybe, if you're lucky. And it's hard to get, particularly for small operators. If you don't grow your own, then you're dependent on the market. And I have had times when I was at my teacher's this year where we had problems getting vine to give to people because people would say they were going to get it and it didn't turn up, or what they got was too immature and it wasn't any good, and we were contributing to the overharvesting problem without being aware of it. You go into the center of Iquitos and everybody's got these little necklaces with little pieces of ayahuasca on. Those are baby ayahuasca. That's like wearing shoes made of baby seal fur, okay? So there are some of the stalls in the market that have huge chunks of old vine, and they're sold as curios. I just look at that and I want to scream, because somebody has cut down an ancient vine here. And while people are planting to some extent, what we need ideally is for everybody to stop using ayahuasca for about 10 years and then come back. Because of this, because of the increased price and the lowered availability, some people are adding a whole lot of other toxic plants to the brew. This has always been true to some extent. I've heard horror stories of brews containing like 30 different plants, including stuff like chirisanango and toei and virtual witches brews. And people take these and they have a serious trippy experience. They get their bang for their buck, but they're permanently damaged. I sometimes see casualties of these places showing up at my teachers, and they're nuts. You know, they're paranoid, they're completely depressed. They've been left out in the jungle by themselves for 6 months. All kinds of stuff is going on. And part of that is due to it being open season. There's no regulation to say who's a good practitioner and who's not. But a large part of it is also the expectations that the gringos bring with them. I say gringos because it seems to make more sense to me than Westerners, because South America is in the West. If it's offensive, I apologize, but that's what I use. So, gringo expectations, with apologies to Charles Dickens. A lot of the people who go down to Peru to drink are looking for their their ayahuasquero, their curandero, who is going to be a saint or a guru who has their best interests at heart and is never going to do anything to hurt them or be influenced by economic considerations. They're looking for a saint. They're looking for God. And if they can't find it in the ayahuasca, they'll find it in the people who administer it. They also think that anybody can take ayahuasca. It's absolutely harmless. You don't have to do anything special before or after. They also believe that since they are coming and being customers, that the experience should be tailored to them. Also, they expect that people in Iquitos are going to behave based on their values of the developed world, and they're generally middle class because those are the people who can afford the time and energy to come down. This causes a lot of problems, as you can expect. Ayahuasqueros are human. And because of the economic situation of people in Iquitos, which is generally pretty dire, they tend to see gringos as walking wallets. Even people who develop relationships with you of great affection, in the end, you are a resource. And that can be hard to deal with. There are everything from out-and-out crooks who take people out into the jungle, leave them there after robbing and sometimes raping them, to gringos who have drunk maybe 5 times and think that they're qualified to administer ayahuasca to anyone who comes, to people who have been trained in the traditional administration of ayahuasca but just aren't very experienced, all the way on up to legitimate maestros, people who have a lot of experience, who've done the full-on plant initiations, who really know what they're doing and have seen pretty much everything. But again, they're still human, and forgetting that is a peril. Ayahuasca is not risk-free. There are some very definite counterindications. One of them is heart problems. Another one of them is severe asthma. Another one is a history of psychosis. Also, ayahuasca mixes very badly with certain prescription medications. SSRI antidepressants and monoamine oxidase inhibitors both interact very badly with ayahuasca. Ecstasy can be fatal when mixed with ayahuasca if you've taken it within the 24 hours before you take the ayahuasca. Also, the environment that you take the ayahuasca in needs to be generally safe. I know a lot of people have been hearing about the person who died at Chimbre, at one of the centers there. And the problem with Chimbre was that it was built on the side of a cliff. So people would take the ayahuasca and then they would be left alone, wandering around disoriented, and they'd fall off the cliff. We don't know for sure that that's what happened to this guy, but it seems likely given the topography of the site. And anyone looking at it who has had any experience with ayahuasca would have said it was an accident waiting to happen. With the experience being as comfortable, as convenient as possible, the number of times a group of gringos show up on the doorstep at my teacher's house with no preparation, no warning, and say, "Hi, we're only in town for a day. Can we drink with you tonight? Oh, and by the way, we have no money." Would these people do this at home? The arrogance of it just kind of takes my breath away. We've also had people who drink just because they happen to be in the area. In particular, I remember a couple of Canadian extreme sports enthusiasts who decided to do it to kind of tick it off on things to do before you die sort of deal. And they started with the ceremony, and they got about halfway through it, and then they found me and told me they wanted to leave. And I told them that it was really disrespectful to leave in the middle of the ceremony when they hadn't even had their healing yet. And they said, "Oh, we don't believe in any of the healing. It's just that we're bored because we can't understand the Spanish, and we're uncomfortable, and we're just fed up and we want to leave." And I stressed again that this was really disrespectful, both to the curandero and to the medicine. And they said, "Oh, we don't mean to be disrespectful, but we're leaving." The one thing that was good about it was that they paid the minimum amount that they had contracted to pay, and my teacher didn't have to waste any more energy on them. It's like, these are extreme sports enthusiasts, and they can't stand sitting in the dark in a tambo with mosquitoes? Strange. Another problem is that there are tangible cultural differences between the developed world middle class worldview and the folks in Iquitos. Not to say good, bad, or whatever, but they do exist, and not being aware of them causes trouble. A particular problem is that casual hugging in Iquitos is taken as an interest in a sexual way between sexes. Men and women do not hug unless they are courting, basically. And there have been many incidents where gringos attempt to express their affection for their curandero or for people involved in the ceremony by hugging them, and then this is then misinterpreted. And that may be at the core of some of the problems of allegations of sexual misconduct. Not all of them. I'm sure there are a lot of crooks out there too. But cultural misunderstandings do play a part, and that should be acknowledged and prepared for. Another big thing is that because of the historical poverty in Iquitos of most of the population, they do not see it as wrong to cheat someone if they think they have more money than they do. Seriously. So I spent many years sending money to my teacher, and I was always under the impression that it was going to be used for what he said it was going to be used for. This was not the case. What often happens is a gringo sends money for a specific purpose, expects that this purpose will be accomplished by the next time that they see the Peruvian. Then they get there and they find the purpose has not been accomplished and the Peruvian wants more money. And this causes unrest, let's say. This is not due to any personal flaw on the part of the Peruvian necessarily. It's part of the cultural milieu. But if you're not aware of it, it comes as a nasty shock. And it can destroy confidence in the Peruvian, in the ayahuasquero, in the medicine even, if it's let go without being cleared up. These are just a couple of the problems that keep cropping up. So if you want to go to Iquitos or to somewhere else in South America and drink ayahuasca, I suggest that you examine your motives. Why do you want to drink ayahuasca? There are bad reasons and there are good reasons. I would say the worst reason is to go for power. And sometimes this is clothed in the idea of, oh, I want to develop my spirituality, I want to become a shaman and help people. But at the base, and it's usually because most of the people who do this are guys, that they want to get women. They have no understanding of the rigor of the training to be a shaman. Most of the time you are spent celibate, on a diet, out in the jungle, by yourself. When you're not, you're cleaning up vomit. You're cleaning up people's diarrhea. It's not glamorous. It's not fun. The hours are lousy and the pay is worse. But the people who come down for power usually find it because it's a lot easier to go for power than it is to go for healing. If you want to become a sorcerer, a brujo, the training is like 6 months. It's not hard. You don't have to diet, you don't have to abstain from anything, it's really attractive. Some of the slightly better reasons to drink are to get high and have visions, or just because you can. Again, this is not recommended. At the very least, it's disrespectful to the tradition. And disrespecting the tradition has repercussions beyond just annoying the curandero and annoying the people who are there earnestly seeking. Getting high and having visions, and because you can and are in the area, these are generally attracting people who, like the Canadian extreme sports enthusiasts, have no interest beyond their own immediate gratification. They are not likely to obey the rules of the ceremony. They are not likely to respect the curandero. They are not likely to pay. While there may be exceptions, in general, the people I have seen who come to drink for these motives are a pain. A better reason, though still not fantastic, is curiosity at a more deep level, not just how high can I get or will I contact aliens. The folks who come down for scientific curiosity, the folks who come down because they're trying to solve intellectual problems, as long as they're willing to respect the medicine and respect the strictures, I don't have a problem with them. And the curanderos generally don't have a problem with them either, as long as they show respect. I can't emphasize that enough. The better reasons to drink ayahuasca are for healing yourself and for healing others, because that's what ayahuasca is for at the end of the day. Ayahuasca is a diagnostic tool. When a curandero is in the zone with lots of experience, he can look at you and your body looks like a medical scan, and he can see what your problem is and can call the spirits to come and fix it. That's what the Icaros do. They call the spirits come, and they fix you according to what the curandero points them at, pretty much. Healing isn't always limited to a physical problem or even an emotional problem. People in Iquitos drink for reasons like finding lost objects, trying to figure out who stole their dog, trying to find a love partner. All these things are legitimate uses of ayahuasca. And sometimes the people who come for these, even the locals, aren't respectful of the tradition either. So it's not a fail-safe, but it's definitely a good sign. Also, people who come down to Iquitos who have chronic or serious problems and have tried a whole lot of other stuff first, they're pretty amenable to doing whatever the curandero tells them. If the curandero says, okay, you're going to sit here in the dark and you're not going to make any noise, yeah, sure, they'll do it, because they're desperate and they're willing to be open to stuff that they might not otherwise be willing to be open to. This causes problems in and of itself if they fall in with people who are unscrupulous. And probably that is a big source of exploitation as well. There gets to be a kind of guru syndrome where the gringo is so impressed and so relieved by the experience that they kind of worship the curandero. And because of things like countertransference in a therapeutic relationship, the curandero starts to believe it too, and things go from bad to worse. So people who start out as well-intentioned and possibly good curanderos can have their heads turned by it all. That seems to have happened with at least a couple of the curanderos in Iquitos. The best reason of all to drink ayahuasca is to heal other people. But you can't do that until you sort out yourself. It's not like you get to a point where you say, oh yeah, I'm perfectly fine now, everything's all sorted out and I don't have to worry anymore. That's when you know you have a lot to sort out and something's going to bite you in the ass. So it's not the question of getting to a point where you're perfect, because you're never going to get there. You have to get to a point where you're able to set aside your own ego and concentrate on the people in front of you and act in their interests, even when it's against your convenience and against sometimes your better judgment. That's hard. This is incredibly difficult work, and the people who do it are just amazing. My teacher, I'm just in awe of him. The last 6 weeks I was there this time, I was there from September to the end of January. Sorry. He was ill for the last 6 weeks, and I took over for him because at this point I've been studying for 7 years and I'm starting to get a handle on what I'm doing. And it was the hardest I have ever worked in my life, because I was seeing patients, I was doing healing on him, I was holding ceremonies, and I didn't even have to deal with maintaining his family or making sure everybody got fed or cleaning up. So it's just a phenomenal amount of work. So ayahuasca is one of the strongest psychedelics known. If you think about mushrooms or MDMA or cannabis, that would be kind of like taking a regular prescription drug for a problem, yeah? Ayahuasca is like major surgery. You don't want to entrust yourself to a surgeon who's drunk. You don't want to entrust yourself to a surgeon who's trying to get into your pants. You don't want to entrust yourself to a surgeon who skipped half the lectures. It's capable of incredible healing and major damage. Some say that it's capable of incredible healing only because it's capable of major damage. That's why the education of people who want to go down and drink it, or even people who want to drink it here, is essential. Because that way adverse reactions can be kept to a minimum, danger can be minimized, and the traditional efficacy can be preserved. What do I mean by traditional efficacy being preserved? Well, this kind of thing has happened before with various substances and various spiritual paths. The most relevant example, I think, is that of Maria Sabina, who was a curandera holding mushroom healing ceremonies with psilocybin in Oaxaca, in Mexico. When she was discovered by Gordon Wasson in 1955, they lied to her and told her that Wasson needed healing, because otherwise she would not have held a ceremony for them. She did, and he published his experience in Life magazine in 1957. So then mushroom tourists completely overran the area in the 60s. And because you can just pick a mushroom and eat it, there were people doing mushrooms in the street, just lying there completely off their faces. No respect, no preparation, no nothing. And Maria Sabina herself fell prey to the temptations of power and prestige and money. In the beginning, she didn't charge for her ceremonies, and she would only take people who had a legitimate reason to take them. But over time, and as people kept offering her things, she opened up her ceremonies to anybody who wanted to come, and she started charging more and more money. It is said that the mushrooms actually lost their healing power because of what she had done, giving them in a disrespectful context and in charging more than was allowable. And she ended her life actually ostracized by her community and destitute. The same sort of thing could happen with the gurus in India, and it looks like happening now in Iquitos and other ayahuasca centers in South America. It's a little bit better in that you can't just pick the ayahuasca and consume it. You could possibly buy a bottle of it in the market and drink it, but that's playing Russian roulette. It could be chicken shit for all you know. But it is a serious issue, and it's something that needs to be taken into consideration. As I said at the beginning, I love ayahuasca. Ayahuasca has done amazing things for me, and I've seen it do amazing things for other people too, when it's administered with respect, when it is consumed with respect. And I'd like to close with a quote from Charles Dickens, which when I found it made me just about fall off my chair. "Minds, like bodies, will often fall into a pimpled, ill-conditioned state from mere excess of comfort, and like them, are often successfully cured by remedies in themselves very nauseous and unpalatable." He could have been writing about ayahuasca. So I'd like to thank ayahuasca and my teacher, Don Juan, the ayahuasca standardization workshop that we had yesterday, from which I got a lot of good ideas, the Breaking Convention Committee for giving me the opportunity to make this presentation, and all of you for listening. And here's a picture of me dancing with my teacher.